We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So it begins.
You know how much I sacrifice?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are sex people! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft Services.
Hey Trent,
What's up?
you're looking well showered.
Thanks, I took a shower. What's up?
Trent is annoyed because I'm pushing us to record saying I was tired and he said he was tired too, and then I said that I had to edit this right after we recorded.
I'm tired too. I have a headache. I rallied the troops. And then I'm here happily chatting with my friend Parth, chatting about our days, and he's like, let's save it. Let's save it for the recording.
Well, you asked me what I did on my night out on the town, and I said that was podcasting conversation.
It's sacred.
Which is true.
Okay, just because I'm so curious and genuinely not annoyed. What have you been eating?
I'm glad you're genuinely not annoyed. Myself and friend of the show, Sophia Alexis, very good friend of mine, and I went out to see the Springsteen movie, Springsteen Deliver Me From Nowhere, terrible title. And afterwards went out to dinner because we saw it with our friend Hannah, Sophia's former roommate. And we went out to an old joint, Trent, of ours. This sort of makes it seem like we went there more than we did, but we went to Destination Dogs.
No, that was our joint for a bit.
I think I've only been there like 2 or 3, or no, maybe I've been there more. But yeah, anyways, there's a classic story wherein on my 21st birthday, I drunkenly asked for a hot dog. And then when a hot dog was produced in front of me, I said, I don't want, what is this?
Well, the joke being that it's a hot dog establishment, so they obviously have an array of very elaborate hot dogs with a lot of toppings, and you just said hot dog. That was interpreted as plain hot dog. Plain hot dog was presented to you.
I wanted fancy
You
hot
wanted
dog.
fancy hot dog, precisely.
But anyways, I went there with Sophia. We got Korean barbecue chicken wings, and I had myself a Cantonese sausage with pickled carrots, mayo, and jalapenos on a
How
bun.
was it?
And it was mighty delicious.
Oh, good. I also had Korean food for lunch today.
Did you?
Yes, I should have probably got the Korean fried chicken in hindsight. I got kimchi fried rice, and it was fine. Yeah, I think we frequented Destination Dogs for a minute there. First, because we knew a waitress, because she acted in one of Jackson's films.
In front of the show, Jackson Clark's.
And those good vibes in the air briefly allowed for us to drink underage there, which transitioned into us drinking legally there. And then once you can drink legally, you can kind of go anywhere. And so then that relationship teetered off.
Trent, what'd you have most recently?
I had that kimchi fried rice leftovers. It was okay. My dad grew up in the Philippines, so he loves kimchi. So I tried today to have a soft spot for it. And I don't know if that's for me.
Kimchi's not really for me either.
No, it's like just sounds bad. It's pickled cabbage. It's those are just two ugly words next to each other.
But you know what are two beautiful words next to each other? Craft services.
Yeah, if you guys can't tell, Parth is tired and wants this to be over.
Wait, Trent, can you tell that I want to cue the intro?
Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film where we talk with them about their experience working on the picture. This week we have writer-director of Shelby Oaks, Chris Stuckmann.
Yeah, this is a Trentless interview, unfortunately. We couldn't make the scheduling work, but thankfully not a Trentless intro or outro. But enough about Trent and a little bit more about Chris Stuckmann, who is our distinguished second ever writer-director on the show, following, of course, Evan Morgan of The Kid Detective, also a good movie. He was gracious enough to give us like a half hour to talk with him. He's on a busy press tour for this movie being distributed by Neon. He's kind of a big dog now. And so it was really cool that he talked to us. It was especially cool for me. I've been a fan of his YouTube film reviews since, I was a kid, maybe like 11 years old. So it was sort of surreal to talk to the man himself.
Yes, speaking of some of our people we're a fan of, Sean Fennessy on his podcast was talking about Shelby Oaks, said some positive things. And then I was at the AMC in Times Square and going to see One Battle After Another finally, and there was a huge display for Shelby Oaks.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. Big deal for Chris, his directorial debut. Big deal for me, big Chris Stuckmann fan, and a lot of listeners, I'm sure, also listen to his review. So kind of want to get right into it. What about you, Trent?
Parth, like you, I just want to get right into it.
Cue the interview. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our interview with Chris Stuckmann. He's the writer-director of Shelby Oaks. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely, Parth. Thanks for having me on.
So just to give a little bit of background, I know you came up with the story with your wife and wrote the screenplay on your own. Can you just talk about that development period for us?
It was a fun time. My wife and I, we would stay up pretty much all night. This is before we had kids, and so we had the ability to do that. We'd stay up all night on our back porch. We'd eat dinner, and then we would just kind of sit on our back porch in the summer and just come up with ideas, and basically anything at that point was discussable. It was like no holds barred. Any random idea, we would hash it out. It was a really fun, creative time that I will look back on very fondly.
And can you talk about landing on this film's structure? Because it's a little unusual, or it's sort of specific. It kind of reminds me a little bit of an M. Night Shyamalan movie. I know he's a big guy for you. Can you talk about landing on that structure?
Yeah, I think for me, it's always been, we've got a portion of the movie that plays like a mockumentary. We've got portions of the movie that are found footage, and we've got traditional narrative filmmaking. And so it's a mixed media movie. And we live in a mixed media world. We get all of our information and our stories from all different types of media. There is no one specific way that we experience the news or our stories or anything. We read books, we watch movies, we watch YouTube, TikTok, podcasts. There's no barrier to how many different ways we can experience a story. And I love the idea of telling an indie horror movie from that way too, of like, look, we can get into this narrative, and it's technically a linear story that plays from point A to point B. But we're also entering into different points of this narrative through different lenses, literally. And I love the idea of having cameras that the characters are aware of and cameras the characters are not aware of, and being able to use those cameras to tell this story in a way that feels, hopefully unique. And I was getting my car repaired at a car repair shop when I was writing the script, and I had a lot of free time, and I was wandering around in the parking lot of this car repair shop. And I was just like, every time I watch like a true crime doc on Netflix or something, I always think to myself, they have all these like dramatic recreations of scenes that are in there, and we all just kind of accept it. And why can't we do that in this movie and have like the true crime aspect, have the interviews, have the found footage, but also have, scenes where the characters don't know the cameras are there. And as soon as I came up with that, I kind of was like, okay, now I feel like I'm breaking rules or something. Am I allowed to do this? And I called a bunch of filmmakers I knew, and they were all like, what are you talking about? You can do whatever you want. Just make your movie. And that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, and I loved, especially, I don't know how long it is, maybe 20 minutes, that opening found footage mockumentary sort of style that you've got. I was really impressed with how period accurate everything was. A lot of movies don't take that time to... This is what YouTube looked in 2009. Can you talk about getting that accuracy? How did you achieve that?
Thank you. I mean, we shot all of that on tape for real with an old camcorder. All of the gear that we used for the Paranormal Paranoids channel was period accurate, including the editing software. We edited on iMovie on my old iMac that I had to dust off, and gratefully still worked. Shot everything on tape and uploaded it through a FireWire cord, all these old pieces of technology I haven't used since I was a teenager. And it was a very long process to upload hour-long tapes to an editing software, because you can't just drag and drop a file. You have to rewatch the whole thing again while it uploads. With the YouTube element, I reached out to a contact I had at YouTube just to make sure we could actually like do this legally, and there were no issues of like showing what 2008 YouTube looked like. And they're like, yeah, it's all good. And for me, like what interests me about that time in YouTube is that I started in '09, but that's just like the movie review stuff. Like I had channels before that. I think my first channel was in like 2007. I didn't use my name or anything. I never showed my face. I would do like fan edits of my favorite movies and like, cheesy anime music videos and things like of the era. And then I had a speed drawing channel for a while where I would just film myself drawing and it would just be my hand and then I would speed up the drawing. That's all gone now because in every single video I would always put a copyright song and I didn't understand copyright law.
You were a true YouTuber.
Yeah. Very early YouTube where it was like, oh, wait, copyright is a thing? Okay. And so there was this kind of innocence and sense of discovery to a lot of YouTube channels back then, where most of them, if not all, were not thinking about money. I don't think a lot of people use the word monetization that often back then. I think it was kind of like, okay, let's just make stuff because it's fun to make stuff. And let's try to get an audience and reach people with our entertainment. And I wanted to enter into that space through the lens of a paranormal investigating team that is, admittedly very amateur, but that was the idea. Like everybody was just trying things out back then on YouTube. But there was also a sense of if you came across a strange video on YouTube back then in like the mid or late aughts, and it had like a UFO in it in someone's backyard or someone spotted Mothman or something, there was always this weird sense of like, is this real? Because back then it wasn't like AI wasn't even a part of the discussion. People weren't not everybody wasn't a visual effects expert. And so if you saw something strange in a paranormal video back then, it did cause a stir. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to kind of enter into that space and try to remember it.
How fluid was all of the stuff with Riley that you have, that backstory stuff? How much stuff were you filming and then leaving on the cutting room floor, like reinventing in the edit, or was that true to what you'd written in the script?
One of the benefits about all those episodes that we shot with them was that we knew a lot of it would not end up in the movie. There were specific scenes that were always scripted scenes. Like there's a moment where she pauses in front of a prison cell and something happens. And that was scripted. Obviously, the cold open of the movie was scripted with her in the cabin, addressing the camera. But the benefit was that we could then, if anything didn't end up in the movie, we could just upload it to YouTube and have it live there as something that fans could find. And, that whole Cloverfield thing that I've talked about of when I saw the Cloverfield trailer back in 2007 and was like, what is this? And then I went online and there was all this stuff. And you could kind of open up this world that was already there of news report videos and creepy images that made me realize, wait a second, like, what is this movie? What is this about? And that was kind of the idea, was not only could we film things very efficiently on tape and shoot them very cheaply and put it in the movie, but we could then also have all of this extra material that we could either just put online or even put on the Blu-ray, which we are going to do.
Awesome. So this is sort of notorious, maybe is a bad word, but like it's very known for being, I think, the highest funded horror film on Kickstarter. I think you had a original goal of like $250,000 and it ended up being like 1.3 million. Can you talk about that increase in scale, how it forced you to think differently as a director? Obviously 1.3 million or whatever the budget ends up being, it's still a very low budget film, but it is much bigger than you were originally anticipating.
No, it is. You're right. I mean, it's one of those things where I was so scared to ask for money. Honestly, I was very scared to do that. And scared is the right word. I was like terrified to do that. It just made me feel uncomfortable. And I come from a working class family. My parents were bus drivers. So was I. I worked at like fast food restaurants and stuff, and then started making YouTube videos. And the idea of asking for a handout it actually makes me feel like I'm going to break out in hives. And so when they showed up the way they did and people supported us, what that allowed us to do was get gear that we never thought we'd have. It allowed us to hire a bigger crew, and it gave us more days to shoot. We still only had 20 days for principal photography, which is not a lot, but originally we were talking about 16 days, and that would have been damn near impossible. And so the fact that we were able to get 4 extra days, hire more crew, better gear, this just really opened up the amount of time that we had. And even though we were still very tight every single day with our deadlines, it gave us an opportunity to shoot more and longer.
I believe this was shot for real in Ohio, where I believe you grew up. Was that always the decision? Was there ever any possibility of filming somewhere else?
Honestly, and this is my fault, no, because I wrote the script around locations in Ohio that I knew I could get into. And that was a risk because, yeah, I knew I could get into, but there's always the chance that maybe, one of them falls through for some reason. And suddenly then I have to find an abandoned amusement park somewhere, which is damn near impossible. And I knew like there's this abandoned amusement park in Ohio. If I can get in there, that'll work for the script. The prison, if I can get in there, that'll work. There's a lot of abandoned stuff in the film to create the ghost town of Shelby Oaks. And all of those locations were found with me just driving around northeastern Ohio, kind of keeping my eyes peeled, looking for places that we could maybe shoot in. There's a quick shot of an abandoned car graveyard, completely real. There's a aerial shot of a 3-block radius of abandoned homes in Cleveland, also completely real. And all of these places were just found because I paid attention to the space that I lived in and looked for places that would make the movie look way more expensive than it is. Because yes, our budget is around but I don't think it looks like a $1 million movie. I think we punch above our weight class, and it's because of these locations, because of our DP Andrew Baird and our amazing gaffer Benny F and all of his team. So no, it was never going to be shot anywhere other than Ohio simply because we couldn't.
Right. Is that Ferris wheel? Like that there's no digital anything to that?
That's there. That's still
that looks amazing.
Right. Thank you. No, that's still there. That's an old amusement park called Chippewa Lake Amusement Park that closed in 1978. My mom went there as a little girl. And so when I went to the location, I sent her a picture of the Ferris wheel and she was like, I rode that when I was a teenager. So yeah, there's a lot of memories housed in that amusement park, and they're trying to turn it into a museum, which was actually really scary because during production, I thought to myself, oh my God, if they start like demolishing this place and making it look really nice, this is going to ruin our movie. Please let it look like this for a little bit longer.
Just speaking on locations, I'm pretty sure you shot in the Shawshank prison. I'm sure everyone has asked you about this, but I just got to ask, what was it like? Did you watch the movie again before shooting there just to be like, oh, this is the space? Or like just talk about shooting there?
I didn't watch Shawshank again because I didn't want to be overwhelmed with how wonderful that movie is and then being like, I'm going to shoot there too. I did watch a little bit of Air Force One though, because Air Force One actually has a scene shot there. There's this moment where like that general was being released from prison or something, and it was shot there. In fact, there's a leftover prop from Air Force One that has been at that prison ever since like 96 or whenever they shot it, that we put in our movie. When she gets to the prison and pulls up to that gate is the gate from Air Force One. It's been sitting there since then. And I was like, I love Air Force One. So I was like, let's get this in the movie. I will tell you that it was very, very creepy in there at night. That place, it's very easy to get lost. It's like a labyrinth. You do have to have a guide kind of with you because everything looks the same in every space. And so it's really easy to be like, wait, is this the right place? And then you get lost and suddenly you're in solitary confinement, which totally happened to somebody. And we had to like find them, and it was so scary. But we loved shooting there. We only had 2 nights, which was tough because, you've seen the movie. It's a pretty
lot of shots.
It's an in-depth scene, and we were moving pretty quick. And we were always sort of struggling with too much wind because we got pretty lucky with the weather most of the nights. But in the first wide shot where she's walking through on the ground level, you can see lights streaming in through the windows, sort of simulating our moon. And all of that is these giant 18K lights that are outside on cranes that are coming through. And they're about like 80 feet in the air. And you've got one person at the top of that crane bundled up in a coat, who's controlling that light if need be on a walkie-talkie. And they're up there for hours. And the law states if the wind gets above a certain mile per hour, you've got to bring that person down. It's not safe anymore. And both nights we were teetering on the edge of that mile per hour mark. And it was very, very stressful of like, oh my God, please wind, just stop. Let us keep these people safe and let us shoot this movie. But we got through it.
Without giving it too much away, there's a house that the main character arrives upon. Was any of that a set build at all, or was that all just similarly like a real abandoned place that you used?
So the exterior of the house was real. We happened across this house. It was actually an amazing blind stroke of luck because the hero home, as we call it, Mia's house, is a fairly large property. And we were looking all around it. And far back into the woods behind our hero location, we found that house. And
Wow.
it was almost
No location move.
Yeah, exactly, man. It was almost script accurate too, like the way it's like at the crest of a hill and everything. Like that was all in the script. And so the exterior, yes, but all of the interior is a set.
Great. One of the effects that it's in the trailer, so I don't feel too bad about talking about it, is that opening gunshot to the head. Can you talk about getting that? Because if that didn't sell, I don't think the movie works in the same way.
Yeah, thank you so much. No, we had so there's two times you see it. There's through the documentary lens and then in the traditional narrative. And we had 2 takes. We had time for 2 takes for both. So 4 takes total. We did, and all the blood is practical. We had a big can and sort of like a nozzle that was ready to shoot that out. But the actor has got to time this part, with the trigger. The actor's got to time all of that. And then, of course, our makeup technicians have got to time that spray. And we're also shooting. So the one sequence is shot documentary. So it's like 24 frames per second. But then the traditional narrative portion is shot in slow motion. And so if it doesn't work, you're going to see it all. It's in slow motion. And so the first take, we were off on our timing ever so slightly. And it's stressful because now you've got to clean all that up because we really did spray that all over our actor and all over the wall. And the second take, though, we got it. And that's, again, a testament to our crew. It was, and thank you. I appreciate that it worked for you because I needed to have a moment that felt jarring enough to not only tell the story properly, where the documentarian has to kind of stop doing what they're doing because this can no longer be something she can shoot. But also for us as viewers, we are ripped out of this moment and introduced to a new moment through something very shocking. And it had to work in camera. And I'm really proud that there's no CG in that shot.
Another thing that I really loved, there's some creature design, and I believe you worked with Carlos Huante, who worked on Blade Runner 2049. You can go through his resume. It's all cool movies. Can you talk about that collaboration and trying to make something that is unique?
Yes, Carlos is amazing. It's funny because he was recommended to me, and then I looked at his filmography and I saw the movies you just mentioned, and I was like, well, this is a no-brainer. But then I kept scrolling and I saw Signs, and I was like, oh my God, this guy literally designed on Signs. Of course I have to work with him now. And then I was very annoying, and I asked him to tell me stories about everything, and he told me some great Signs stories, which was really, really cool stuff I had never heard, and it was really exciting. But I had a notebook that was kind of filled with a lot of my crazy sketches, strange images and stuff. And I shared some of those with him. And then I found a bunch of images online that inspired me, and I shared those with him. So we had like probably a 3-hour discussion over Zoom, and he knew everything that was in my head. And then he went off and kind of did his thing. Sent me some rough sketches initially. He would just text me sketches and I would say, yay or nay. And once we settled on what's in the movie, then it came to going to Jason Hamer to actually build the suit. And Jason Hamer is also a legend. He just wrapped The Odyssey with Nolan. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming there's a lot of practical creatures in that movie, which I can't wait to see. But every time Jason would get on Zoom, he'd be in his studio, and behind him are all these like suits and stuff from all these legendary movies. And it just kind of feels like I was so privileged to be able to work with these people, and so lucky. So he built the suit, him and his team, and he would send me pictures of that too. And then it became about who do we get to fill this suit, because it's got to, and of course this is happening in tandem. They measure an actor and then they build off of those measurements. And working with Derek Mears, who is also a legend in this space. I mean, he's Jason from the Friday the 13th remake, Swamp Thing. He was also in Signs. He is the alien on the roof that Mel Gibson sees out of the window. And so, again, I come up to him and I'm like, hey, man, I need to know, what was it like? Tell me everything. And he is like the definition of a gentle giant. He's 6'8", and he is a very tall person. I'm 6'4", and I'm not used to like literally looking up at people, but he is an incredible human being, and so kind and so sweet.
So obviously Mike Flanagan is an executive producer on the movie, and I know that you showed the movie, a rough cut of the movie, to some other filmmakers. Did this have traditional like test screenings at all, or was it all sort of friends and family?
No, every time Neon acquires a movie, they test it, even with Parasite. It's like it's a company rule they have. So yeah, we did it. We did a test screening, which is nerve-wracking and scary.
Was there anything that came out of that? Was it any changes made that were sort of notable for you, or anything you learned about the movie through that process?
Of course, yeah. It's impossible to show a movie to a crowd of like 800 strangers who have no interest in seeing your movie, because that's the goal, is they go out and recruit people who like maybe they've never even seen a horror movie before. And it's just like, come see a random movie you don't even know what it's about, and then tell us what's wrong with it. So it's a very scary experience, because the goal is negativity. The goal is like, tell us what we can fix. And I sat there and I listened to everybody give opinions, and you know, you hear good things and you're like, all right, cool, we're cooking with gas here. And then you hear other things and you're like, all right, maybe we could go in there. But the thing about the test screening that I think is, it can be such a privilege, but it can also be a trap, because you are getting feedback from people who don't maybe understand the horror genre, who aren't fans of the genre, and maybe they don't quite, maybe they haven't seen enough horror, you know, and they don't quite understand certain things. So you do have to kind of sift through some unnecessary notes to find those gems where you're like, ooh, that's something I never thought of before. And there were a couple things that me and the editors, Patrick and Brett, looked at from the cards afterwards and thought, that's good. Yeah, let's try to put that in there.
Mm-hmm. And since you brought up Neon, can you talk about learning the ropes on distributing a movie and getting involved with them, and what that process looked like? Was that after Fantasia, I believe?
Yeah, right after. And so the first time I went to the Neon offices, I walk in and I meet Tom and Jason and all the great people there. And they bring out a thing that was wrapped in like a cloth, and they lifted the cloth, and it was the Parasite Best Picture Oscar.
That's pretty dope.
It was pretty cool. And they were like, "Do you want to touch it?" And I was like, "No, I will not. That is not for me. That's not mine. That's theirs, and I don't want to. No transference of energy today on this." But it was wonderful to see. And then Tom, he was like, "You made the right choice," and I was like, "Was that a test? Did you just test me with an Oscar for Parasite?" Anyway, they're great. They are the best of the best, and especially when it comes to marketing materials, because like when they approach me with everything that goes out, whether it's a poster or a trailer, they are actually asking me my opinion. They're not just releasing it without asking me, which is, I've been told, is very rare. This is obviously my first experience. And so a lot of other filmmakers that I've been talking to are like, it's amazing that they're even showing you this stuff. Most of us don't have a say. We just kind of like sign our lives away, and then a production or a distributing company just kind of puts out whatever they want. And Neon has always asked for my feedback. And the best thing about it is I hardly ever have any. They're so good at what they do that I don't really even, they send me things and I just get excited to look at it, you know?
Yeah. Can you talk about, I love the posters and the trailers have been really great. I mean, I love the posters with the like sort of overexposed. How involved were you in those? Or was that something that they brought to you?
A lot of the posters are based upon, so there's a photo album in the movie, and we took about, I don't know, over 1,000 photos for that. And there are many photos in that we did not show in the movie because they were just too much.
Right.
They were just too much. And what I'll always say about that photo album, this is a side point, is people keep photo albums of their fondest memories, right? So I find it very disturbing that this character in the movie has decided to put those memories in her photo album. But anyway, that's a side point. We gave them all of that. We were like, here's this treasure trove of photos we took during production. And from that has kind of risen a lot of these marketing materials. And I'm really excited about it.
Now that this whole process is sort of coming to an end for you of like making the movie, releasing it, what is the part of being a director you feel like you've improved at the most, or most notably for you, by the end of this whole process?
I think the thing that I and most first timers know very little about is all of the workflow, meaning like at this stage of production, we talk about this. We don't talk about that. At this stage of production, we do this. How files are to be properly sent to the colorist, to the composer, how to make a DCP for theatrical distribution, the types of paperwork that has to happen when you hire an actor from Canada like Camille, who is not SAG, but you're doing a SAG production, and how long that takes, and the work visa from Canada to America. These are all things that, like, I don't think anybody ever talks about, probably because they're boring, but they're things that are very much so involved with making a movie. And it's the type of thing that I think when you sit down and you're like, I'm going to write a script, I have these images in my head, I want it to look like this. That's all so important and is probably the most important thing. But then you having this knowledge of how it actually, the workflow of getting a movie actually made and the amount of communication that goes in between those departments. I learned 50 new things every day about that. Like, just like having someone on set, a data wrangler, who his entire job was just to keep all of the things we were shooting safe. Meaning, like, he would just, at the end of every day, he'd leave with 3 or 4 hard drives filled with all of our shots. Very stressful job, but I could always go to him and be like, hey, I would like to look at this shot from this part of the day, from this scene. And he would give me a thumb drive, and I could go home that night and kind of review it. And that was our very indie way of looking at dailies, technically, because we don't have time to look at dailies on an indie movie, to actually like look at everything you shot. And so just learning that like that was a possibility, that you could do things like that now, and who to talk to and how all of that happened. I think that's where on the next one, there'll be less questions from me, that because I've experienced it now.
Directing a movie has obviously been your goal for a long time. Is there a scene from the film you would most love to show your younger self as proof you became a director?
I'd probably pick something really, really violent and then show it to my Jehovah's Witness self and be like, so that my young Jehovah's Witness self would be like, maybe I should leave this religion quicker. So probably that. But to answer your question in a less jokey way, I'm very proud of the prison scene. I think it plays really well. I think it's suspenseful, and I think Camille's amazing in it. Andrew Baird, our DP, did the Lord's work. I would definitely, I would want to show that scene to like 14-year-old me and be like, hey man, stay alive, keep grinding, and you're going to be okay.
As we sort of start to wrap out, the Big Kahuna final question. What is the last great film you watched? It can be a first-time watch or a rewatch, but it has to be not just good, great.
Last night, I'm in New York right now. I went to the Angelica Film Center and I saw If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You.
Oh, awesome. How was that?
Amazing. Rose Byrne should not, I wrote on Letterboxd, Rose Byrne should not have to campaign for an Oscar. That it should just be mailed to her house. She's really, really good in it. And it is very stressful. It is a very stressful watch, but it's fantastic. It's really good.
Yeah, I'm a big Conan fan, so that one's
high
on my watch list.
He has forever been my favorite late night host.
He's the GOAT.
He's incredible. He is a comedic genius, and he's really good in it. His role is completely straight, no comedy.
Wow, so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Chris Stuckmann, writer and director of Shelby Oaks. Thanks so much for being with us.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on.
So Parth, how did this live up to your expectations? They say to never meet your idols. I don't know if you consider Chris Stuckmann one of your idols. You're definitely a big fan. But how'd it go?
It was really, really fucking cool to talk to him. He opened the call with, "Hey Parth, thanks so much for wanting to interview me." Or like he said something like that, but he opened up right out the gate saying my name correctly and everything. And like I was sort of sweating bullets, and usually you are there and it takes away some of the stress because I know that if my brain short circuits, you can be there to just be like, oh, here's another thing. And I know for you, I can be that. But when it's just you, you really have to pat your head and rub your belly at the same time, if you know what I mean. Like it's you're having to listen and think of the next thing at the same time.
And you have to think of the next question when usually I do the next question, and socially you can't allow there to be as many lulls where instead of speaking a third of the time, you're speaking half the time.
Yes, but it was very, very cool. He was very nice, very gracious with his time, and I want to thank him and his team for making it all happen. I would have loved to have gone for another half hour. This is unfortunately this is the only episode. We're not splitting this into 2 parts because that would just be ridiculous.
It's part 1 and done and part fun.
All in one.
All in one package. And here it is. You're finishing listening to it now, so you guys would know better than anyone what this is all about.
Yes. But again, thank you so much to Chris Stuckmann. This was a big deal. I think I first reached out about this in like February or something like that, and they pretty immediately responded, which is not always the case, and followed through, which is even much more so not the case. So I just really want to thank them for making this happen, because this was a big deal for me. This was a big deal for the pod. So thank you so much. And if you like this episode,
if you like this episode, if you like Parth and I, if you just like one of us and not the other one,
feel free to rate us 5 stars on any podcasting platform of your choice, which is where these episodes go up anyways. And feel free to say which of us is your favorite. So long as we get the engagement, we won't care.
If you only like one of us, feel free to rate us 4 stars. That's still plenty. And rate a review, tell a friend. Where you can listen to us is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and frankly, anywhere you get your podcasts. Look where you're listening to the podcast now, and go back there next Sunday at 5 a.m. That's when the episodes come out. That's when this episode is going to come out tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. That's why Parth is ready for this recording to be over.
Something like that. But thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.